just a coincidence. All right, good afternoon. In a short while, we will be joined by our guest, who today is Olukemi Ibikunle, a Nigerian corrections officer serving with the UN Peacekeeping Force in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. She is the winner of the 2025 Trailblazer Award for Women, Justice, and Corrections Officer. And she will officially get the award later this afternoon from our Deputy Secretary General. This award was established in 2022 by the Justice and Corrections Service of the Office of Rule and Law and Security Institutions. And it recognizes outstanding contributions of women, justice, and corrections officers deployed in peacekeeping missions. Tomorrow we will have another guest, and that is Roberto Benesch, who is UNICEF's Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean. He will be joining us live from Haiti to speak to you on the humanitarian situation of children in that country. As you know, there are around 3.3 million children, which is the highest number in record in Haiti, that require humanitarian support. Despite the insecure and volatile environment, UNICEF is working with partners to step up efforts to protect families and provide life-saving support. Turning to the situation in Gaza, and our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that Israeli military operations have continued, including in the Rimal and Zaytun neighborhoods in Gaza City, making the already dire humanitarian situation even more perilous. In the last 2 years, nearly 42,000 Palestinians have suffered major, potentially life-changing injuries in Gaza. 1 in 4 of those injured are children, and more than 5,000 amputations have been recorded. That's according to our colleagues at the World Health Organization. Meanwhile, our partners on the ground report that many people are unable to leave the north due to insecurity. People are sleeping out in the open and struggling to survive amid severe food and shelter shortages. Today, the UN Satellite Center published a preliminary analysis showing that the extent of damage in Gaza City alone encompasses 83% of the structures. About 81,000 housing units have been damaged. And turning to the West Bank, our humanitarian colleagues tell us they remain deeply concerned by the impact of the ongoing Israeli operations in the West Bank, including those in refugee camps in the northern areas. Those operations have now entered their 10th months. Tens of thousands of people remain displaced from their homes in Tulkarem, Nur Shams, and Jenin camps. Meanwhile, ahead of the olive harvest season, which represents a key economic and social cultural event for Palestinians, our OCHA colleagues tell us that some farmers in Nablus, Salfit, and Kalkilia were unable to harvest their crops in the past few days due to physical attacks by Israeli settlers or because their trees were vandalized. In the first 9 months of this year, OCHA has documented more than 1,200 attacks by Israeli settlers across the West Bank, which resulted in Palestinian casualties, damage to properties, or both. This includes damage to more than 17,000 trees and saplings. Turning to Yemen, I was asked about the latest development concerning our colleagues who remain detained forcibly by the Houthis. As I told you yesterday, that an additional UN staff member was confirmed detained. Our co-workers in Yemen today tell us that the additional person who was detained yesterday was released today. The number of detained UN staff now stands at 53, and some of them have been detained by the Houthis since 2021. We continue to urge the de facto authorities to immediately and unconditionally release all UN humanitarian workers who are supporting the most vulnerable people in Yemen. Just to give you an example of the essential work our colleagues have been doing, the recent confirmation of 29 polio cases in Yemen has made the mission to protect every child more urgent than ever. To stop the spread of polio this month, our colleagues at UNICEF and the World Health Organization, supported by the Ministry of Public Health and Population in Yemen, launched the second round of the national polio vaccination campaign across 12 governorates. Over 3 days, nearly 15,000 health workers went door to door to vaccinate more than 1.3 million children under the age of 5. The first round of vaccination took place in July of this year. We remain steadfast in our commitment to support the people of Yemen and their aspirations for a lasting peace, and reiterate also our call for the Houthis to free all of our colleagues, as well as those from NGOs and diplomatic missions who've been detained arbitrarily. Moving to Syria, I can tell you that we and our humanitarian partners continue to deliver aid in the southern part of Syria. This is happening amidst challenging security environment and limited funding. Our humanitarian colleagues say that nearly 420,000 people received humanitarian assistance each month in the governorates of Dara, Sweda, and rural Damascus, and that was in July, August, and September. Since the beginning of the hostilities in Sweda Governorate in July, and as of October 6th, earlier this week, OCHA has led 19 humanitarian missions in southern Syria, 12 to Sweda Governorate, 5 to Dara Governorate, and 2 to rural Damascus Governorate to assess the needs of displaced people and communities affected by the crisis. OCHA tells us that the security situation across the southern Gaza remains volatile, including sporadic armed incidents, and continue to impact the humanitarian access and our effort to protect civilians. In Sweda Governorate, essential services remain under strain due to the conflict, the economic decline, and administrative hurdles, with disruptions in the sectors of food, health, and agriculture. Public bakeries have temporarily closed, and urgent agricultural support is needed ahead of the October to December planting season, and that is to prevent any further food insecurity. Our partners also report that the hospital of Shabha faces severe shortages, including water, electricity, communications, and medical supplies. Meanwhile, with the start of the academic year, 62 schools that served as displacement sites were closed in Sweda and Dara Governorate, displacing more than 7,400 people. The $3.2 billion humanitarian plan for Syria is currently just 18% funded, with 580 million US dollars in the bank. Turning to Ecuador, I can tell you that the Secretary General condemns yesterday's acts of violence in Ecuador against President Daniel Noboa's motorcade, and we remain deeply concerned about the situation amid ongoing protests. The Secretary General calls on all actors to refrain from any form of violence and to engage in inclusive dialogue to resolve their differences peacefully. He underscores the importance of safeguarding democratic institutions, upholding the rule of law, and respecting human rights, including due process. Our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed will travel to Brussels later today to attend the 2025 Global Gateway Forum, and that she will do that on behalf of the Secretary General. The forum brings together leaders from governments, the private sector, and civil society to exchange ideas and accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. During her visit, Amina Mohammed will meet with senior Belgian officials to deepen the partnership between Belgium and the United Nations. She will also engage with senior European Union officials on the UN-EU partnership to advance the 2030 agenda. Following her visit to Brussels, the Deputy Secretary General will go to South Africa to participate in the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation Drakensberg Inclusive Growth Forum, and that will take place in KwaZulu-Natal province. The forum will bring together key stakeholders to discuss inclusive growth strategies that foster sustainable development across the region. During her visit, she will also meet with government officials and key stakeholders to discuss advancing financing for development agenda following the 4th Financing for Development Conference in the context of South Africa's G20 presidency. Further updates on her travel will be shared with you. Just lastly, quick note on our peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic. They welcome the announcement that 2 armed groups have now disbanded, and those 2 groups are the Sayo wing of the Revolution and Justice group and the Nagaisona wing of the Anti-Balaka group. Both are signatories of the peace agreement. This significant steps formalized during an official ceremony held yesterday in Bangui marks progress in implementing the agreement and builds momentum towards lasting peace. The mission urges all remaining armed groups in the country to join the peace process and calls on those already committed to the peace agreement to sustain and deepen their engagement. Their continued commitment is essential to achieving lasting stability and national recovery in the CAR. And also just a quick update on the on the tragic incident that took place in September when, as you'll recall, an armored vehicle belonging to our foreign police unit from the Republic of the Congo plunged into the Ombela River. We can now confirm that the body of a fifth peacekeeper was recovered just yesterday, thanks to the tireless efforts of our colleagues and support of local residents. We once again extend our deepest condolences to the families and friends of the fallen peacekeepers and the government and people of the Republic of Congo. Excuse me. No money, no quiz, so I'll go straight to questions. Deji and then Ibtisam.
Hi, Steph. Several questions. First, we know that tomorrow there will be a ministerial level meeting in Paris, holding by obviously France on the two-state solution and the post-war transition in Gaza. Will the UN participate in that meeting? Anybody from UN?
That's a good question. I need to find out.
You are aware of this meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing is I noticed the list of the countries that's attending this meeting. There's no Palestinian Authority. How would a meeting discussing
listen, you would have
Gaza
to ask the organizers of the meeting.
Okay. Another thing is this is about the UN. I noticed that you and Farhan, I forgot whoever, told us that since starting of October, the UN staffer here will be present in office at least 4 days per week. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How's the implementation of that policy?
Well, I can tell you the staff in my office is in about 7 days a week, so I'm sure everybody else is doing their part.
Okay.
Ibtisam.
Thank you, Steph. I don't know if you saw a report by the new Humanitarian that they are accusing top UN representative in Gaza to collaborate, or let me quote them. It's about Susan Talik, who is the UN Deputy Humanitarian Coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory. And they talked in their investigative report to at least 10, I think, 11 aid workers, UN high officials also. And they are saying that Ms. Talik has allowed Israeli authorities to manipulate the aid response, failed to push back against growing restrictions in uncritically repeated Israeli talking points, and offended Palestinian colleagues and community members, including by blaming them for the aid shortages. So do you have any comments?
First of all, we fully support Ms. Talik's work in Gaza. Our humanitarian colleagues and the leadership of the UN's operation in Gaza operates in an extremely difficult political situation. It is not our discussions with the Israeli authorities on trying to get more aid in is not a discussions among equals. One side holds much more power than the other. We continue to try to exploit the space that is given to us for humanitarian operations, even though it's gotten a bit bigger in the last few weeks. It is not nearly enough, and we will continue to advocate and push and try to get as much aid in as we are allowed.
Because this is actually a no answer, because as a matter of fact, these are very serious accusations.
I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah, but the question is, are you investigating these accusations? When you say you fully stand by her work and etc., you must have investigated these claims to come with that conclusion.
I think staff members who are not happy about the way we do our work have all sorts of mechanisms through which to express it.
No, she's not. She's not the only one who has been working in a very difficult situation and negotiating when it comes to Gaza and letting aid in. But this is the first accusation that I know of in the recent time, at least, of such a senior UN representative The question is whether are you going to investigate these accusations or not?
Look, we are fully aware of the article and we stand by her work. Before I go to questions, I've been given two statements to read out, which I want to share with you, because that's the point of this briefing. The first is on Madagascar, and I can tell you that the Secretary General has been closely following the situation in Madagascar and is deeply saddened by the tragic loss of life and destruction of property since the beginning of the youth-led process on September 25th. He extends his heartfelt condolences to the families and victims and calls on the authorities to comply with international human rights law. He underscores that protests must take place in a peaceful manner, respecting life, respecting property, and the rule of law. The Secretary General calls for dialogue towards forging a constructive path forward. And also on Myanmar, the Secretary General is alarmed by reports of an aerial attack in Chaung-U in Sagaing Region that reportedly took place on 6 October and said to have claimed the lives of dozens of people, including children and many more. He extends his condolences to the families of the victims and calls for an immediate, safe, sustained, and unhindered humanitarian access to help those in need, including for first responders who are providing medical care to the wounded. This tragic incident, if confirmed, would add to a disturbing pattern of indiscriminate attacks affecting civilians across Myanmar. It also exacerbates the suffering in Sagaing, which is one of the most severely impacted regions by the earthquake earlier this year. The indiscriminate use of airborne munitions is unacceptable. All parties to the conflict must comply with their obligations under international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Those responsible must be held to account in accordance with international law. The Secretary General reiterates his consistent calls regarding Myanmar and the violence, protect civilians, ensure humanitarian access, and pursue an inclusive path towards a peaceful resolution. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. First, to follow up on Yemen, was the person who was detained yesterday and released today a Yemeni national or an international?
Yemeni national.
And secondly, has the United Nations actually been getting food and other aid supplies into the very north of Gaza, which had been the most difficult place to get into?
I don't have any updates on those movements today, but I will check for you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of days ago, I asked you about the presidential decree in Syria that formalized the nation's public holidays and excluded Nowruz, the most important holiday or cultural event for the Kurds. You said you tried to get back to me on that. And the second question on the recent clashes in Aleppo between SDF and the Syrian forces. Does the United Nations have a presence in that area, and do we know what exactly happened, what triggered those clashes?
I don't have any analysis firsthand from colleagues on the ground about what triggered those clashes. Obviously, any clashes are concerning to us. On the presidential decree, we're of course aware of the issuance of the presidential decree regarding the public holidays. For us, as I've said many times, it's important that Syrian authorities to ensure that every Syrian, regardless of their religion, their ethnicity, feels included in the future of their country. And we reiterate the imperative of supporting a credible, orderly, and inclusive political transition in Syria. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. In a joint statement on Tuesday, members of the Moscow format of consultations, which included Russia, China, Iran, and other Central Asian states, expressed strong opposition of the U.S.'s desire to regain control of the Bagram air base in Afghanistan. They stated jointly that this would be a development that would gravely undermine the self-determination of Afghanistan and incite broader regional instability. Just curious if the SG had any comments on this.
Not particularly. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. First of all, a quick follow-up on Madagascar. Do you have any UN personnel on the ground?
Any what, sorry?
UN personnel.
Yes, there's UN, probably a pretty large UN country office there's a lot of humanitarian activities and development activities going on in Madagascar. As far as I know, all is safe and accounted for.
Thanks. Second question, if you don't mind.
I don't
on
mind at
the
all.
assassination attempt on Ecuador president, any comments on that?
Alex, I did read out.
Sorry, I missed it. Sorry.
That's okay.
My bad.
That's okay. But we'll share it with you. Islam, please.
Thank you, Stéphane. I just would like to ask some details you mentioned about the UN Satellite Center analysis. If I didn't misunderstand you, you said 83% of Gaza
Gaza
was
City is what I.
Gaza City destroyed.
Let's.
The question is, how often a UN Satellite Center does this kind of analysis, and what happens after? Does UN Center share this with ICJ or ICC? What is the process
It is public
after?
information. I don't know what the periodicity of it is, but it is public information.
And if I may ask second question, there was another Israeli interception, I believe this morning, about flotilla. Any reaction to that?
I mean, all as we've said before with the various flotillas, is we want to make sure that everyone is safe. Yes, sir, and then Benny.
Thank you, Steph. Indirect talks between Israel and Hamas is on the way in Egypt. I know a few countries, such as Turkey, Qatar, are involved in the talks. I wonder if the United Nations plays any role in the talks, or is United Nations consulted with in the talks?
We've been in touch with various mediators on the ongoing progress, but we are not one of the mediators. Benny.
There's a leaked document on staff cuts at the UN that basically, I don't want to get into the real numbers, but the bottom line is that more people are cut in the lower ranks of the UN, and the top ranks are pretty much almost intact. Any
I think,
comment
first
on
of
that?
all, a couple, I don't think this was, there's a lot of public information out there. Part of that, the reason I think it is now, is that there will be structural changes which will impact senior leadership posts. A lot of those will have to have member state approval. So I think you may see that impact later on.
So you say that senior levels are going to be cut as much as lower levels?
What I'm saying is that you will have to wait a little bit to see the overall impact. But leadership positions of units, if they were to disappear, would probably involve a unit itself disappearing, and all of that is more structural, and that would involve a member state's approval. And the Secretary General will be presenting the revised budget soon to the Fifth Committee. Any questions online? All right, one, Deji, and then we'll go to our guest.
Very quick question. When you said that UN is in consultation with the mediators in Egypt, are there any
No,
UN
I said we're in touch. I
in
think.
touch? Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry.
That's
Okay, so but are they in touch in person in Egypt?
No, I'm not
or-
aware that we are in.
Oh, you're not.
in
Okay,
Egypt.
okay, you're not in
Exactly.
person.
There are
Okay.
all sorts of electronic means of communicating with people these days. All right.